Welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in again. I was absolutely revving after our last episode, and I was really keen to get back onto this one. So the topic today is something that's really, really close to my heart, very relevant in my life at the moment, as I'm sure it will be for a lot of you, and that's the concept of emotional resilience. So essentially, I like to coin it as emotional fitness. And it's pretty much how we face challenges, how we face setbacks, and what those setbacks do to us internally, right? Not a lot of people want to talk about those things, feelings of fear or anxiety or any of the other things that come up when we face setbacks. So today's discussion is really around emotional resilience. Myself and Gid are going to share some stories about what we've overcome. And pretty much just making this something that we need to have more of a conversation about in general, whether it's in sporting circles, entrepreneur circles, or even just, general life and relationships, building the emotional resilience so that we can actually pursue our goals in spite of these setbacks. So I'll just start off by explaining what emotional resilience means to me. So working with clients and obviously just being a human being in general, let alone an entrepreneur, we face challenges, right? We face setbacks. And even when things aren't even going too badly, it's quite challenging to always stay motivated and to stay on track. So I like to compare emotional resilience to, coin it as emotional fitness and compare that to physical fitness. So if you're physically fit, you're able to run up a hill, you're able to lift weights, and you won't necessarily get too worn out or too fatigued by that exertion. When you're emotionally fit, you can handle challenges, right? You can handle failure, you can handle setbacks, you can handle confrontations, and not let it tire you out emotionally too much. Now, obviously, we all have certain levels we're going to feel that fatigue, but building up that muscle is really important, especially if you're an entrepreneur, and just if you have big goals in general. So that's what it means to me. I don't know about you, Gid. What does emotional resilience or emotional fitness mean to you?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks. It's good to be back, and I'm keen to be chatting about this topic. I feel like this is one where you've done your research. So like the listeners, I'm going to be learning a lot in this episode. So I think just to start off, I guess the way I would define it, resilience is you have some sort of challenge, some hurdle, some setback, that's difficult to deal with, being in a tough time. And I suppose resilience is being able to bounce back and to try and do that relatively quickly. So I guess if you use the analogy of getting an injury, a physical injury, so you break your arm, you can't really do much about that. You have to have it in a cast and wait for 3 months, 4 months before you can slowly start to use it and eventually play sports again or whatever. I guess it's kind of the same thing with emotional resilience. So you go through a tough time, you're under pressure, you fail at something, I don't know, anything in life that's not physical, that happens. And it's about shortening that time, about being able to bounce back and shorten that time to recover. And so, I don't know, I guess from my side, that's what it means, is being able to address it, realize it for what it is, learn from it, and bounce back quickly, as opposed to something happening and then being, dwelling on it for months and months and months and going to bed thinking about it. By then it's in the past, and it's there's no point in dwelling on it. So in my mind, it's that you come across a challenge, you realize what it is, you deal with it, and then you try and bounce back. So that's what it is. Is it always easy to do? On my side, definitely not. So maybe you can share some of your advice on understanding how to deal with things that come up and how to try and bounce back.
Definitely. And look, I think you had a couple of good points there when you said, firstly, bouncing back, right? Because that's the thing. It's not this concept of emotional fitness. When I'm sharing it with my friends or clients, a lot of people have this mentality that emotional fitness means that, you are, what is his name? Chuck Norris, right? You're absolutely unbreakable and, nothing can rattle you whatsoever. But and how that ties into what you were saying is, it's how you bounce back. We're all going to get knocked down, right? Mike Tyson has a famous quote where he says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? And at some stage, we're all going to get punched in the mouth. At some stage, we're all going to get knocked back, and we're going to take those falls. It's not about not taking the falls. It's exactly how you said, right? It's how do you show up? How do you bounce back once you take that fall? I think it's really emotional fitness it's about developing that muscle just how you would physical fitness. You don't go into the gym for one day and then you've got a six pack and you're healthy and fit for life, right? It's something that you've got to condition on a daily basis. So bringing that element of consistency and repetition to building that emotional fitness is important. And we do it in the exact same way that we build physical fitness. We push ourselves to the limit. and we feel a lot of exertion, a lot of pain, a lot of fatigue, and then we recover and we do it again. And each time we do it, we kind of build that up. So that is the process of what you touched on, which is learning, right? It's having the ability to say, all right, I've failed, I've had this setback. How can I learn from this? How can I develop myself and grow from this so that when this happens again, I'm strong enough to get through it? So if we again relate that to physical fitness, if you are training 5 hours a day, 7 days a week, and exerting yourself completely, your body doesn't have the time to recover, to grow, so that you can then handle a higher challenge next time, right? So pushing yourself all the time, nonstop, is also not going to build that fitness. It's actually going to degrade your fitness in the long term, just like overtraining in the gym. So I think there needs to be a balance where, yes, you're going hard. Yes, you're obviously pushing yourself. But like you said, you're learning. You're taking the downtime to analyze what happened, analyze your setback, learn from it, so that when you face that challenge again, you have that muscle, right? You have that mental, emotional muscle to get back at it. So, and coming back to what you were saying about, how do we kind of tie it all together and develop it? And I think that really comes down to focusing on what positive meaning you can take from the experience. What positive meaning can I take from this, and how can I adapt to this in the future? So a perfect example, if we look in the sphere of relationships, right? There's going to be fights. There's always going to be confrontation. That's just the nature of human beings. If every single time we have a fight, and this doesn't even have to be intimate relationships only, right? This is any relationships, business, family. If every time we have those arguments, if we kind of sweep it under the rug and leave it, we don't actually recover from that, right? So that the next time it comes up, we haven't built that extra muscle. So it's going to put us back in the exact same place we were before. It's that process of developing through the challenge. That's what builds the emotional fitness. And it's a hard thing, right? Because, and I'm sure everyone watching this can relate, we don't like to look at our failures. It's not nice to look at where you stuffed up, right? It's lovely to look at the wins. So really having the self-awareness and the discipline to focus on those failures and setbacks and take the positive meaning from it, I think that's really where it comes up. So I mean, in business, I'm sure it's a big one. So again, what has been a time for you, or maybe a situation in business where you've had a setback and kind of got to the point where you almost thought like, hey, I'm almost ready to throw the towel in. I don't know if you can tell us a bit about that and kind of how you overcame that.
No, 100%. I really like the stuff that you said there, and I agree. And I think, it's a good idea to use personal stories to try and explain the steps to, build resilience. But I think for me, if we're getting personal, it's like you're running a business, you take decisions, right? You can't waste time. You have to sort of make decisions and, face the consequences of those decisions. And I've just gone into business and done bad deals and done like a lot of work up front that, you don't end up getting paid for because you went into some sort of profit share agreement, or even like hiring somebody and like spending a lot of time, like really training them up and, looking after them and trying to bring them into the company and stuff like that. And then you try and give them a proper role and they split. And it's all these things. And I'm specifically explaining it like this way because it's like, bad deal, it's their fault. Hiring the wrong person, they were shit, it was their fault. But in reality, I think the hardest thing is that you have to sit down at the end of the day and be like, it was my fault. I made the mistake. I chose a shit deal. I didn't plan it. I hired the wrong person. I think that's for me. So, those are some examples, but really the first step is like being able to sit down and like make peace with the fact that, okay, this probably is my fault. Well, not probably. It's hard, but this is my fault. And I got myself into this situation and I need to get myself out. And I think that's why what you said about being able to face it and being able to take a learning from it is so important. Yeah, definitely that, like anything financial, man, like even just like saving up enough money to like pay salaries in advance and stuff. And then something happens, like right now I have to take my car for a service and that's gonna be like 8 to 10 grand. I've just been saving up cash. So it's like, I don't know, these little things that come up and you're like, shit, it really would have been better if that didn't happen right now. I've worked so hard to get you, but you don't really have control over it. So I think those are some examples. I don't know. What about yourself? What's you and your mental resilience?
Yeah, and man, I think, and the reason, I'm happy to share this. The reason we decided I brought this up as a topic to use is that Sure. In the last, month, my emotional fitness has been down. It's been weak. I haven't been as strong as I normally am. And I mean, we all go through phases like that, right? I mean, we have phases in our life where we're more physically fit and less physically fit. So I think it's important to share that, because it's not one of these things where you go to the gym once and you're fit for life. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs. What matters is the constant discipline behind it. So being such a tough time at the moment for me, and again, it's like you said, it's the little things, right? It's often not the big thing. It's not one big massive thing that happens. It's these little buildup of things that kind of stack on top of each other and kind of start wearing you down. So yeah, I think on many fronts, obviously you're always trying to grow your business. You're always trying to, look for more opportunities there, always trying to push yourself further. Financial issues. I mean, I'm going through an investment challenge at the moment where I've kind of invested my money and I can't get the money back. So there's all these doubts about, is this investment legit? Are they going to take my money? It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of uncertainty. So, I think the baseline of it is I kind of try to analyze when I look at people who I believe to have very strong emotional resilience. I kind of try to model them, right? I kind of try to see what are their beliefs? What do they believe that leads them to being so, emotionally fit? Again, always bringing it back to this metaphor, but it's the same as being physically fit. A person who's physically fit has different beliefs about what they should do every day and about their body than someone who isn't physically fit, right? If I'm physically fit, my belief is I need to exercise every day. I need to put good food into my body. So looking at people who are mentally and emotionally fit, I think a massive one, and you touched on this earlier, is taking responsibility. It's taking responsibility and saying, you know what, this is 100% my responsibility, not 50-50, not 90-10. It's 100% my responsibility. And the bittersweet pill to swallow is that sometimes you need to take responsibility, even when it's not your fault. And that I find it's a big hurdle for me personally, because we all know the cliche saying that life's not fair, but it's not. Good people get screwed over. Sometimes you work your ass off. Sometimes you do all the work up front and you end up getting screwed. So if you walk into that with the victim mentality and not taking full responsibility, you lose your power, right? That responsibility is where you get the power. It's kind of like how you activate those mental, emotional muscles. Because once you take the responsibility and say, listen, even though this is not my fault, it's my responsibility to respond in a way that's going to help me get out of this. And that is just going to let me be in a positive and happy state. And I think having that belief is so important. And again, to touch on these beliefs, it's all good and well to say it intellectually, but we all know that you can know something intellectually, but in the moment, in the emotion of the moment, you can forget things, right? I mean, I read a study the other day when you're in a high level of stress, your IQ can drop up to 50%. Who knew getting angry could make you stupid, right? But this, it happens, and then we end up forgetting things that we know to be true. So yeah, I think for me, it's really just remembering that everything is my responsibility, and it might not have been my fault, but my reaction is my responsibility. So how can I learn from this? How can I go forward? That really is the key for me personally. So yeah, I think this whole topic of emotional fitness, it needs some habits behind it. We've talked in the other episodes about how to develop habits in general. So one of those habits is taking responsibility. So what do you think? I mean, has there been a time in your life or moments in your life where you've kind of been in an emotional state and you forgot something that you know to be true when you're calm? Can you relate to that?
When I forgot something that I know to be true. Do you mean just like having clouded judgment in a way? Like
exactly, kind of like being in the heat of the moment, being angry, and you know something to be true. This person in front of you is good, for example. They're not trying to hurt you. They're not trying to piss you off. But in the moment, because you're angry, you kind of forget that. So I don't know if there's ever been a situation like that for you, or I don't know. How do you feel about that in general? Maybe not for you. Maybe you've experienced it from someone else.
No, spot on. No, I'd like to share a personal story. So I think so, and we can get into the topic of like stoicism and talk about how you separate yourself a little bit from your emotions and what's happening. And so we can get into that now. But I think the last couple of years, it's been easier to do that. And I feel like I've been a little bit less affected in like these spikes and pits of emotions. I feel like I've been a little bit more attached, which is good in a way. But I think back in university, so when I was studying at Vega and stuff, so 2016 to 2018, like I was not built for school. Like, not to say like I couldn't study or whatever it is, but I just hated it. Like I hated the environment. I didn't like, being told what to do and having structure and lecturers who don't always practice what they preach. So I think those 3 years were probably like the toughest I've had to date in terms of like having to recognize that like this thing that I'm doing, like you were saying, is actually good. It's not bad. It's good. I'm actually lucky to be in a situation like people would kill to go to university. So it's a good thing that I'm experiencing, but I have all these negative emotions. Like I hate this. I want to drop out. It sucks. I want to do my own thing. So I think that's, probably like the biggest thing that I've gone through myself is just to like stay calm, be like, okay, it sucks. I don't enjoy it, but this is actually really good. I need to finish it. It's going to serve a purpose. It's just something that I'm going to get through right now. So that would be for me, I guess, like the most recent thing. I don't know. What about yourself? Like maybe you've got something a bit more recent over the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I completely understand that. And it's actually a good point to bring in, because I think one of the best ways, well, almost like an exercise, right? Almost like a squat in the gym. One of the best exercises to build that emotional fitness is just practicing gratitude, right? Like as simple as that sounds, I believe in patterns. So I believe in patterns, and patterns show themselves in life, right? If someone makes a lot of money, there's a pattern there, right? There's a pattern of focus, there's a pattern of habit, there's a pattern of something that they're doing. If someone is emotionally fit and emotionally wealthy, there's a pattern. And what I found with those patterns of emotion is that it's a pattern of focus. So we all have these patterns or habits, if as a synonym there, habits of focus. There's a kind of couple of patterns that tie into this, but one of the biggest ones is focusing. Do you focus more on what you have or what you don't have, right? Which again is this concept of gratitude. But you see, it's a tricky thing to balance. And bringing it into my personal story is that if you look at that particular pattern, if that pattern of focus, do I focus on what I have or do I focus on what I don't have? If that is out of balance, we will experience negative emotions, right? If we consistently on a daily basis, every day, focus on what we don't have, we're going to feel a lack. We're going to feel lack. We're going to feel like there's scarcity, like we're not enough. And the trick is that in order to grow and in order to set goals, particularly in business, and this is kind of how it's tying into my personal story, but if you're going to run a business, if you're going to do anything, of real value to your life, you have to focus on what you don't have, right? You have to focus on the business that you want, that you don't currently have, so that you've got a vision to shoot towards. But again, life's not so black and white. We can't only focus on one and not the other. There has to be a balance. So what's been a real trick for me in business is saying, all right, I'm here now, right? My business is at a certain level and I want to be here. Now, I had a funny thing happen to me the other day. I got caught up, like I said, it's been a challenge. So I got caught up in this mind of focusing on what I don't have too much, right? And getting all these negative emotions and thinking thoughts like, I'm not far ahead enough. It's taking too long. There's something I'm not doing right. And then I was going through this old journal of mine and I flipped through to the beginning of lockdown in 2020. And it was when I'd just come back from the Middle East. I didn't have a house. I didn't have money. I didn't have a job. I just nothing, right? And I'd written down the goals of what I wanted to create for my business. And when I looked at the goals, it was exactly what I have now. And I thought to myself, again, this is one of those things, right, where in the emotion of the moment, you forget what you know. And what I wanted so badly then and what was so amazing is the same thing that I'm pissed off about today. So it was just a weird balance. And so, yeah, that pattern of focus, have or have not, there has to be a balance. You have to be able to have the emotional and mental fitness to shift between those at will, to say, okay, for this hour, this planning hour of my week, I need to focus on what I don't have. But for the other 90% of my day, the other 90% of my week, I need to focus on what I have. Because those two different patterns produce different emotions, but we need the balance. We need the drive that comes from focusing on what we don't have, but we need the presence and the gratitude to focus on what we do have. So that's number one. There's a few I want to share just because it's really pertinent. So that's the first one. The second one is focus. Do you focus more on what you can control or what you can't control? And again, such a simple concept, but what happens in the heat of the moment? We forget what we know to be true. We all know that we should focus on what we can control. There's no point focusing on the weather. If our emotional state is tied to the weather, we're going to be all over the place, right? If our emotional state is even tied to another person, right? Even an intimate partner, we're going to be all over the place. We have to focus on the things that we can control. And when we focus on that, we feel powerful, right? We feel like we have the initiative and the authority to get things done. But if we don't have that balance, and if we get into emotional states where we constantly focus on what we can't control, we feel powerless. Again, we're communicating scarcity and weakness to ourselves, which is not actually the case. So yeah, those two patterns are really the big ones. So that's how it showed up for me, and especially lately in my life. So I don't know, what do you think? Like, what do you think? Have you had times like this where you've kind of gone between have and have not, and can and can't control? What's that been like for you?
Yeah, I think that's such a cool story because I can relate to that so much. And literally, like the stuff that I have now in the life and the people around me now is things that I would have killed for a year ago or 5 years ago. So, but you forget and you just carry on with your stuff. So I think that's brilliant. A, that you wrote it down. B, that you went to go and check on it again. So yeah, I can relate to that a lot. I like that you keep using the word fitness, like fitness. And like, what do you think about this concept that like, the only way to build mental or emotional resilience is to consistently put yourself in situations where it's tested, right? Like,
yes,
the person who didn't really struggle for anything and then gets put in a difficult situation. Like, let's say somebody's had a super easy life and then all of a sudden they lose somebody in their family or they go bankrupt or something. That the chances of that person, derailing and, really going and struggling is higher than the person who's consistently fought for what they want, fought, overcome. So this concept of like putting yourself in situations where you actually test that resilience and you test yourself in those situations, like I think that's important. And like, let's say you're building a business or whatever it is that you do that requires resilience, like you can test it in other ways. So if you are an entrepreneur and you're building a business, you can test your mental resilience by doing physical activity that's really difficult. Because it's the same, your brain is still in that situation where it's like, shit, this is difficult. I need to overcome this. I don't want to be doing this, but I have to be doing this. You can be doing that working on a construction site for like 3 hours or 4 hours in the sun with chainsaws, or you can do that by boxing and sparring, or by doing a long distance cycling race, something like that. Like you can test that mental toughness and then bring back those lessons and that fitness to your business life or your career, whatever it is. So what do you think of that concept of like, looking for ways to test yourself, obviously without putting yourself in a huge amount of risk, but like slowly test yourself bit by bit so that you can build that resilience?
Definitely. And I think, it's again, like that's exactly why I think the term emotional fitness is actually, very, very suited to this, because it's something that needs to be conditioned. It's not something that you're born with, no one's born with superhuman strength or fitness. It's something that's conditioned. So I completely agree. You need to put yourself in situations where that resilience is tested. So for me personally, I was pretty much in that situation. I had a really, really easy upbringing. I didn't, to me, obviously there's different standards, but in my opinion, I had a really easy childhood. I had a really easy upbringing. I had, a beautiful family, a roof over my head, access to the best education. So for me, when I started working out and actually, gymming and getting into bodybuilding, that's kind of what flipped the switch for me, because it was putting myself in those high pressure situations physically. And I remember so clearly, right, because it kind of formed this belief in my head, and it became a little saying I would say to myself every day, is that, and this is actually when I was studying law, right? So if things were tough, if I was studying, it was lots of tests, whatever the situation was, I'd say to myself, listen, if you can wake up and bench press 100 kgs before 7 a.m. in the morning, that is going to be the hardest part of your day. Nothing else is going to be harder than that. And that is what really helped me get through, right? Because it built that emotional resilience in me. So I completely agree. And modeling different areas of your life is so important. And you see it a lot in relationships. You'll have these people who are extremely physically fit or extremely successful in business, but they don't have that resilience in their relationships, right? In their intimate relationships or with their family. So I think modeling different areas of your life is perfect. Just how we model another person's excellence and apply it to ourselves. We're great, right? We're awesome. So we're really strong in some areas, we're weaker in others. So model it, right? What is the mindset I use when I'm in the gym and I'm kicking ass? Let me use that mindset and that resilience in my relationship, or let me use it in my business. So definitely, we have to put ourselves in those situations, and it doesn't need to be in the area we think it is. Yeah. We can take it from other areas, right? And leading on from that, what I like about the term fitness as well is that there needs to be a daily practice. So just the same as you can't expect to be able to run the Comrades Marathon, the day before when you haven't done any training, right? You can't expect your muscles to show up for you if you haven't conditioned them to show up for you. It's the same thing with your emotions. You can't just expect that you're going to feel motivated and grateful and that it's just going to somehow appear for you, right? That just doesn't work that way. So there needs to be a daily ritual. So I'd like to share something that's really worked well for me and that I've seen work really well from other people. And it's a process called priming. And essentially what priming is a mental workout. It's waking up every day and having 10 minutes, right? You can do 10 minutes, you can do 30, you can do an hour. I'll call it my hour of power, where it's 1 hour where I am conditioning my mind and my emotions to be at their absolute peak. So the way I'll do it is I'll break it down like this. I'll start with intense presence, just getting really grounded, getting out of my head, out of all the thoughts, and just getting present in the moment, right? Small things, holding my coffee, looking at the trees outside, anything like that. Secondly is focusing on 3 things that I'm abundantly grateful for, things that I'm so blessed to have in my life. And I like to do 2 major things like my family or my business or my health. And then 1 small thing, I'm grateful for the fact that I'm born in the 21st century and that I can live to 80 and not 40, right? I'm grateful that the biggest stress in my life is my business going to grow? Not, oh my God, the Nazis are going to drop a damn bomb on my head in a bunker, right? I'm grateful for that. So actually experiencing it, and it can't just be intellectual, right? You can't just sit there like, I'm grateful for this and this. You need to feel that sensation, like really focus on it and feel that sensation of gratitude. As crazy as it sounds, you feel emotions in your body. So feel the actual sensation of that emotion going through you. And from that place, step 3, after being grounded and after being grateful, step 3 is just to project out exactly what you want to happen in your life. See it happening before it's happened, and visualize your goals, not as in something that you need to get to, but something that you're in, right? I visualize myself walking into my new house. I visualize walking into my business or running my coaching program, and I visualize it as if it's already done, right? Because the mind can't tell the difference between something that's real and something that's vividly imagined. And I'll say that again because I think it's such a crucial point. The mind can't tell the difference between something that's real and something that is vividly imagined. And the basis of that's why we can be depressed. What is depression? It's focusing on something in the past that you've visualized so strongly that it feels real. What is anxiety? Focusing on an imagined future so strongly that you think it's real, so your body responds as if it's happening now. So that process of priming, you can do it for 10 minutes, right? 3 minutes for each process. You can do 10, 10, 10. You can do 20, 20, 20. Any amount, but I think that daily practice is so important because it starts conditioning those muscles, right? It's kind of the warm up for the day. And if you combine that with putting yourself in very intense situations to build that emotional muscle, it's the same thing. You lift weights every day, you're going to build muscle. You do this, you're going to build mental muscle. So that's going to be my strategy. Those are kind of the tools that I've used. But what do you think about that? How would you incorporate that into your life if you were to?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's weird because it's like I believe in that so much. And I know that like if you can wake up every morning, get yourself in the right state, visualize those things that you want. I really think that stuff works. Like I believe in that so much. I think it's just about creating the discipline for yourself to actually do those things consistently and not to just do it for a month and then fall off the bus. So in my own life, like I've got things written up in the bathroom mirror that I try and read and stuff, but I definitely know that I can do more of that. Like I don't do priming. I know that like going to a meeting, I'll be having like a really bad day, like I didn't sleep very well or something, and I'll be driving to a meeting, I'm like pretty grumpy, and then like the last like 5 kilometers, I'm like in the car, like okay, cool, play music, I'm like let's go. Try and get into the right state so that you come flying through the doors and you like got good energy, and then as soon as you're back in the car, you're like back down low. So I think we do have control over our state, and I think that has a huge impact on how people in the world interact with us, how they see us, the energy that you put out. So I love that idea, but I think it's great. I think the idea of priming is cool. I think just in my own life, I just like need to create that discipline and do it consistently. These things are only, they only work over a long period of time, right? So
exactly. And you know what, it's hard to incorporate those things. And I just want to, I just want to make a point of saying it, is that I'm not saying this, because it's perfect. Like, I definitely, like I said, the last month for me it's been a tough one, for many angles. And when things get tough, you start dropping these things, right? You start losing it. So, I'll go for months doing these rituals, getting them in. A wave knocks you off, kind of makes you lose it a little bit, and then you break those habits, you stop doing them. And it's funny, once you realize that, you actually realize how strongly they were helping, and as soon as you get back into the discipline, you start picking it up again. So again, I think it's very important to highlight the fact that this isn't about being perfect. It's not about being perfect. It's about consistency. It's about always trying and getting back up. And funny enough, one of the biggest reasons I run my business, one of the biggest reasons I coach people is to hold myself to a higher standard. It's one of the biggest reasons I do these sessions, honestly, because I'm not perfect at it. But if I'm out here preaching it and I'm saying it, it's holding me to a higher standard. And that's what I love. And I think that's a big part of mental resilience as well. Sometimes just putting yourself out there, kind of making a commitment that is good for you in the moment. I don't know about you. Funny enough, I'm an introvert by nature, right? I've got a lot of energy, but I'm an introvert by nature. So I don't know if anyone's had this experience. I'm sure they have, where in the moment you say to someone, yeah, let's meet up, let's do this. And then 10 minutes before it's time to leave, you're like, oh, shit, man, all I want to do is just chill here, right? And I think that whole principle is important, because you need to do it with life as well. Sometimes when you're in that high energy peak state, commit yourself to do it, so that when it comes time and you're not going to feel like doing it, you've already committed and you've got something that's pulling you. So that's a bit of a side note, but I think it's an important way of how to build discipline in general. So I'm sure you've experienced that before.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think that's, I agree with that. So there's a quote by Drake where he says, like, I never celebrate my wins and I don't dwell on my losses. I just keep moving. And I heard that and I was like, that's really powerful. Like, and I'm sure he does like celebrate when things go well, and when things are bad, he's stressed and stuff. But I think the principle of like, don't dwell too much on your highs or lows. Like, just keep moving. Like, focus on the momentum, focus on carrying, like, going forward and keeping on with what you're doing. And I think if you can keep that in mind, and maybe I'll just share my own life, like, that's really helped me, because it's like throughout life, things are going to be going up and down all the time. It's going to be constant highs and wins and constant failures and lows. And I think if you the less you can be affected by them and influenced by them, I think the more you'll be at peace. And I don't know, I don't think that, the goal of life is to be in a state of constant euphoria where you're just like super happy all the time, and just that's almost weird. Like, I don't think anyone's like that, like, I think it's better to be in a state of calm and a state of peace, where it's like you're not a prisoner to all the highs and lows, but you're actually just sort of in between. And you have great moments, sure, and whatever, bad things happen, but you've come back quicker to that place of calm in between. So that's kind of my philosophy that I've been building over the last couple of years, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same. So what are your thoughts on that approach?
Oh man, I literally got goosebumps when you said that, because I think it's that to me as well, like that's where it's at. And I think a lot of people have this idea that success in life is being happy all the time, or just being excited all the time, these massive highs. Like, I feel like joy and excitement and all those high intensity emotions are great, but there's nothing that beats the feeling of fulfillment and calmness and peace. And I think that is the best place to be. And like you said, it's always going to be the ups and lows, but it's not about how you stay in the ups and lows. It's how you bring yourself back to the place of stillness and calmness. There's a video I shared on my social medias. I can't recall the guy who said it, but essentially what he was saying is that the ability for something or someone to determine how we feel inside is not a privilege we should give away to anything or anyone. Because there's a million things that are going to happen outside of you. There's a billion things in the world that you can't control. What happens within me is my responsibility, and it's my privilege. I shouldn't share that privilege with anyone else, right? Not that someone can't make me happy, but the decision of what happens within me is my decision and my decision alone. Because if you or someone else can determine what happens within me, is that not the ultimate slavery? Is there no more, there's no more, slave-like mentality than when someone can determine what happens within me. So I completely agree. It's not about going to the highest highs. And look, there's a place for that, right? There's always a place for that. Just like there's a place for the lowest lows. Sometimes you need a mourn, you need to be sad and learn from those experiences. And sometimes you need to have the excited high moments. But the real sweet spot to live is in that calm, steady state right in the middle, because from that place, you're unshakable. And I love that term, because that's what I always try and embody, is I want to be unshakable. Nothing should determine what happens within me except me. So yeah, I think I'm happy that you brought that up, because that's such a true point. I think people are chasing these massive high experiences all the time, where it's actually hilarious that the best place to be is just a place of tranquil peace right in the middle. So that unshakable spirit is really, really, really where it's at.
Yeah, because nothing, like no mental state or no emotional state lasts. So it's just better to just not be affected by it too much. And I think you got to be careful. Like you can also get to a state where you just don't care about anything. And you become a bit like nihilistic, like there's no point to anything. But then I think so you want to find that balance between still having a purpose and still living a meaningful life, but also not being a victim of these highs and lows. So, but I think it's important to say that, because I think, there are people who slip into that state of like, they just feel nothing. And I think that's probably not a good place to be. So So it's probably like, just being aware of your emotional states and having like a healthy sort of control over it and awareness for it, but not like you can just switch it off completely. I think there's probably been times in my life where I've done that, and it's like, I wouldn't say that that's a great place to be. So I don't know. I think, there's lots of books out there, and it's something that probably is not, like naturally. You mentioned the human evolution and stuff a couple of episodes ago about the brain being there to keep us safe, not to make us happy. And like, we probably were given emotions for a reason. Like, there was probably an evolutionary reason to like feel certain things against this tribe and against that type of animal or this plant, because it kept us safe, right? And it helped us navigate and survive. But so it's not natural for your brain to think super rationally and to be in control of your emotions. But I think it's something that we can learn. And I think that's why we have people like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and all these great thinkers of their times, is because they were able to overcome what was natural to their brains. And they were able to really say, like, you are not your mind. You have an internal locus of control. There's things you can control and focus on those, and don't worry about the external things. And I think it's something that you have to pursue if you are interested in being more resilient. Like, if you want to figure out, if you can realize in your life, like, shit, I'm really affected by things that happen to me, and I dwell on them. I'm angry about things for a long time, whatever it is. And if you want to change that, like, it comes down to, like, can you educate yourself slowly? Can you take more ownership for like these things, these situations that you're in? And it's like a process. It's a road that you have to go down and, like, educate yourself. So maybe I can ask you that question. Like, what are some of the people or YouTube videos or books or podcasts, whatever it is, that have helped you, like, I guess on the path of stoicism, like being less impacted by emotions and more in control of the things you can control?
Well, look, the biggest one that stands out to me, I mean, my biggest role model, the reason I got into this industry is Tony Robbins, right? His work, I mean, I've read almost all of his books. I mean, I'll literally just put this one up right now, like Awaken the Giant Within. I mean, it's gold, man. It's gold. Like, so his work, it's really... It's really about that. It's exactly what you're talking about. It's figuring out how this thing works and kind of how to work alongside of it. So I like what you said about, emotions, they have their purpose. And actually in this book, he talks about emotions being action signals. That's all they are. Emotions are signposts, right? You do something, you feel a certain emotion. All it is feedback, right? It's feedback to you to say, okay, I felt a bad emotion. This is obviously something that's not good for me, or something that, is not meeting my needs. And same thing with positive emotions. So they're action signs, right? They kind of direct you in the right direction. I think the challenge that we have as humans is that we don't see them as action signals. We embrace them, and we think the emotion is us. And as soon as you get caught up in believing that emotion is you, that's when it takes over you. I just recently, I think it was today, I posted a blog about, are you a servant or are you observant, right? And that distinction, I think, is really important, because are you being observant of the emotions that are coming up and the thoughts, or are you their servant? Are you just reacting to what they're telling you to do in the moment, or are you listening to them, right? Because emotions come from our child brain, if that makes sense, our primal brain. And the way I like to describe it is you can imagine yourself as a rider and your emotions as a horse, right? That horse has so much power and so much strength, and wherever that horse goes, it's going to be able to get there faster than you, more efficiently than you, and not get as tired. But if you have a direction you want to go in as the rider, and the horse is the one in control, that horse can run as fast as it wants, but it's never going to go in the right direction. So we need to take control of that and not push the emotions away and try and dull them down. Like you said, very dangerous place to be in, where you kind of get to that point where you kind of get cold, right? And you shut off. I've been there, that's a very common habit for me, because it's easy, right? It's an easy escape. It's easy to say, I don't care. When we say, oh, I don't care, and it's I'd rather just leave it, that's really a way of saying I'm gutless, right? Because it doesn't take guts to be pessimistic. It doesn't take guts to be negative. It takes real guts and real balls to embrace those emotions and use them in the right direction. So I think we need to be the rider. We need to take control, because these emotions can work well for us, but we need to be in control. We are the thinker. The emotion is the doer. So yeah, I think it's an interesting subject, and I mean, look, we could 40 episodes on just the subject, but I think it really comes down to, getting back to your question, Tony Robbins, for sure. I mean, his concepts of emotional fitness and priming, and just how to deal with this whole experience is really key. So definitely YouTube. I'm sure we can throw out some links at the bottom of this video. Awaken the Giant Within, Unshakable is another one by him, and a couple of those YouTube videos. So yeah, that's what I would say. Great resources to start start building that emotional fitness.
100%. If I can, Tony Robbins, absolute legend. Like, it's so funny how, like, when you read his stuff or you listen to it, it's like, it makes so much sense. You're like, yeah, of course. Like, but we don't get taught it when we grow up. It's not common practice. But anyway, he's a beast. There's also a podcast called Impact Theory with a guy who hosted called Tom Bilyeu. So he's had 2 different podcasts on there, and I'll try and link those in the show notes for this, like 2 different interviews with like mindset specialists, like really successful people who have like broken down what emotions are, what feelings are on like a scientific level. So I want to talk to you about this. So the one guy, he says, like, emotions, if you are in an emotional state, you're technically living in the past, because something happened and then you had a reaction to whatever happened based on your expectations or whatever it is. A feeling, chemical was released, you had a certain feeling, and then you felt an emotion about what happened. And now you're dwelling on that emotion, which means you're living in the past, because you're thinking about something that's already happened. Like, which is pretty crazy. And I need to send you the link, but he's like, if you wake up and you're grumpy or you're scared or you're frustrated or something, like, the chances are you're actually just dwelling on something that happened in the past, and you're not actually living in the present. And it's like, especially with negative emotions, I feel like the chances are, if you're having a negative emotion, it's probably about something that happened in the past, something that you could have done differently or that you regret. Maybe if you're like anxious or something, could be something that's coming up in the future. But the chances are, like, what you're facing in the present moment, like, is not what's creating those emotions. And it's like, if you wake up every day pissed off about something, it's like you're wasting that opportunity every single day to actually just live in the present and look forward to what's coming. It's like, I don't know, I'll send you that video. I'm keen to get your thoughts on it. But it's quite cool how we're getting more like aware of what these things are and how our brain works and how we are impacted by them. So what do you think of that idea of like being too emotionally living in the past?
You know what? I think that's a really interesting. I'm so looking forward to checking that out, because I really believe in that concept. So there's something I studied, and it's known as Gestalt therapy. The theory of Gestalt says that all your memories are kind of linked in folders based on your emotions, right? So we've got a folder for anger, a folder for sadness, right? So let's say we have a folder for anger. We've got a string of memories that are biologically linked to that emotional state. So like you said, there's a biochemical change. We start to feel angry. As we feel angry, subconsciously, our brain opens up that folder. So maybe something happens now that pisses me off, but I'm not just reacting to my anger now. I'm reacting to all the anger that's linked to this emotion from my past. So exactly how you're saying, right? Maybe it's a small thing now. Maybe it's something that shouldn't have even pissed me off, but I'm not actually reacting to now. My brain is in the past. I'm reacting to all the anger I've felt before that's based on a similar physical feeling. So I think that's powerful, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I've definitely experienced that. Sometimes something small can happen and you react so strongly, and then 5 minutes later you think like, wow, like why did I react that strongly? So I think it's such an important topic to talk about, because finding that out, knowing that information, and then using that to kind of break your state when you go into those overreactive states is so important. Also a massive part about emotional fitness, which I won't dive too much into, but it's not just the conditioning, it's catching yourself when you slip, right? It's catching yourself when you get into those states and being aware of it, and then breaking that state, interrupting the pattern. And the continued repetition of that is like taking a CD and scratching it, right? If you scratch that CD, that laser cannot read the CD the same way. It'll never play the same way again after you scratch it. Interrupting yourself every time you get into a negative pattern is like scratching the CD of your brain. You're consistently conditioning that emotion out of your system, if that makes sense. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and it ties into what you were saying, about living in the past. So yeah, I think this has been a really good topic to talk about, and I think it's something that needs to be spoken about more. And yeah, I think it's just a really powerful conversation. So thank you for that.
100%. No, thanks to you for sharing that advice. It's been super interesting to chat. And I think also like there's stereotypes. So like talking about, like emotional resilience and stuff. Like, I don't know about you, but like as a guy or as a man, that's typically not something that we talk about. But in reality, the things we face might be different. Like we might not be, or maybe just you and I, we're not so impacted by what he said, what she said, whatever it is, what's happening in the news, whatever it is. But it's like stress, or failure, or the pressure of like building a business, or those are all still things that you need like, emotional resilience from. So it's been very cool to chat about it and to share stories. So thanks to you for your advice. And yeah, thanks to people who are listening. Like, thanks for tuning in. It might even be us like watching this video back in like 5 years time and being like, back then we had no resilience. Like, I can't believe we're talking about that. But yeah, it's been really cool to share. And so thanks for the advice, and we'll link this stuff up in the show notes. And I think the last thing, you can maybe say the last piece of advice from your side, but from my side, it would be just flood yourself with so much knowledge and so many mentors and people who have overcome this, so that if you're having a bad day, there's a voice in the back of your head saying like, it's your fault. You're being full of shit. Don't let this ruin your whole day. Like, snap out of it, break the pattern. Just like suffocate yourself with a lot of good advice and a lot of mentors, because I think that'll help a lot. It's when you don't have that, then you don't know any better. And then it's like a bad day turns into a bad week, a bad month, but you don't know that you need to get yourself out of it. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I chat to people like you. I listen to podcasts. I try and surround myself with a lot of that. And I guess over time it seeps in. So that's my advice. What is your closing advice before we end?
Just on that note, just grow. Just like you said, learn, grow, immerse yourself around people that are on a higher level than you in any single area, and you'll grow with it, whether that's in person, whether it's on podcasts, whether it's in books, no matter what it is. Just immerse yourself around that, and like you say, it'll seep in over time. So yeah, thank you for today. Powerful conversation. Really looking forward to the next one.
100%.